Welcome, dear listener, to Wishcrafting, your sanctuary for stories stitched in spirit, soil, and stars. I'm your host, Wishamaya, and today we turn our attention to the ancient ones. Not spirits, not gods, but living beings whose roots have held the earth for thousands of years. Today's episode is a journey through the world's oldest trees. Beings who have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the turning of countless seasons, and perhaps even quiet wisdom of the divine. Today we'll meet ancient bristlecone pines of North America, the sacred olive trees of the Mediterranean, and even the liminal stewards of Britain, the yew tree, and so much more. Along the way, we will explore the folklore, magical associations, and spiritual lessons we can gain from getting to know these trees. Each one is a green temple, each one a keeper of time, and a sentinel standing watch over this beautiful planet that we all call home. So settle in and prepare to walk among the ancient roots of some of the world's oldest trees. Let's dive in. The beginning of today's story weaves itself through the White Mountains of California in the United States, home to the Great Basin bristlecone pine, also known as Pinus longeva. There, in the White Mountains, hidden from exact coordinates to protect it from harm, stands a tree called Methuselah. At over 4,800 years old, it was a seedling when the Egyptian pyramids were still being built. Let that sink in for a second. There is a tree in California that was a baby when the pyramids were being built. That is incredible. 4,800 years old. Although it is theorized that Methuselah could be up to 5,200 years old. Bristlecone pines, like most pines, are very tough trees, and bristlecones thrive in extreme conditions, rocky, windswept, and cold. They don't mind. Once they get planted and established in a spot that they're okay with, they are going to thrive there. Bristlecone pines have dense, resinous, and rot-resistant wood. Many of them appear to be half dead, with gnarled and twisted branches, with only a small strip of bark actually supporting the life of the tree. But that is the secret to their longevity. They conserve life in stillness. They are masters of enduring. Trees already have a fascinating and genius way of protecting themselves from harm, disease, and wounds. And we have a term for this, and it's called the fourth wall method or annex method. And it is essentially a tree has the ability to annex or isolate damaged cells and essentially cut off damaged cells or wounds, which would be in the bark, because trees do all of their work on the outside, or most of their work on the very outer layers of bark. So they are able to expertly protect the rest of their organism by annexing what is rotting, broken, or otherwise damaged. And that is why Methuselah has been able to live so long, because trees use resin in their annexing and their wound healing, and pines are some of the most resinous trees we have on the face of the earth. But the bristlecone pine is especially so. Methuselah has been through so much in her nearly 5,000 years on Earth that she has annexed almost all of her outer bark to where she only has a very small piece of her outer bark going from root to canopy that actually does the work of moving nutrients where it needs to go, which is just absolutely incredible on its own. She is just a fascinating wonder of the resilience of nature. However, from a metaphysical standpoint, the endurance of Methuselah and other bristlecone pines, because Methuselah is not the only ancient bristlecone pine we have. However, the other ones, which are estimated to be very, very close to her in age, are very deeply protected. Their locations are not shared with anyone. They are on private property, and they are guarded. Methuselah's location has been discovered, and if you really wanted to figure out where she was, you could figure it out. You would have to hike in. There are no trails that will get you there, and the steward of that land that she's on is pretty gentle about letting folks who are respectful visit her. However, she is guarded, and she is watched. She is on private property, and the other ones don't even have public names because they are under much, much heavier watch than she is. She has almost opted to be the public face of the ancient bristlecone pines, or at least that's what it seems like. Regardless, we have multiple examples, not just Methuselah, of bristlecone pines being thousands of years old and enduring. So, this endurance lends a hand to the associations of endurance through adversity, but also just time and time magic, the passage of time, the reaching through time, the cyclical nature of time, and being able to remain true to yourself through enduring and through time. However, some other associations that I think of when I think of working with Methuselah specifically, or the bristlecone pine in a magical practice, is the concept of ancient memory. How much have these trees seen? What do they know? What have they witnessed in the cycles of the earth? How have they seen the coastline and mountains of California rise and fall? That ancient memory, that deep-rooted longevity, is an excellent anchor point for a grounded practice, a grounded meditation, or just inviting deeply rooted spiritual energy into your life. When you are going through part of your journey in life where you are really feeling the wheel turn, perhaps life gets busy as it tends to do, and you're having a good time, you're enjoying the changes that are happening, but you still feel like the constant movement is putting you in an ungrounded place. Calling upon or working with or inviting in the bristlecone pine could really help you anchor yourself into who you know yourself to be, so that you can enjoy the process, enjoy the ride, and really appreciate what it has taken for the wheel to turn. So, groundedness that is rooted in experiential joy that makes life worth living, where we're able to be grateful for the small things and lean into the resilience and the strength and the endurance that we know we can accomplish through the hard things. This tree could be an excellent magical ally for such work or calling in such energy, and could add so much depth so much strength to spells that you want to last a lifetime, and even then some. Now, like I mentioned, you can't really just go access these trees. So you can't go find a pine cone or find bark or take some dirt from the site of these ancient trees, right? So how do we work with them if we don't have the physical element of that tree somewhere in our space or on us? Well, I'm so glad you asked, listener, because I've wanted to talk about this for a while. You don't have to hold something blue or look at something blue to conjure up the image or feeling of a clear blue sky. You know what that is. But if you wanted to draw that, you could pull up a reference photo from one of your favorite places. Say you love the beach. You go and you Google search the image of that beach so that you can draw it for yourself and really tap into the creative flow of engaging with a place that you love so much, while also engaging in the energy of what a vast, expansive blue sky feels like on that beach, right? Well, it's the same for basically anything. Methuselah herself does have photos on the internet. So, you could look at photos of her to call in her energy, to connect psychically with her. And you could do this until you establish a psychic link. So what I'm saying is you could print off or look at a photo of this tree while you go into meditation, whatever your favorite kind of meditation is. It doesn't have to be the traditional kind of meditation. There are many ways to enter a calm, relaxed state, many ways to journey in witchcraft and magical practice. So, whatever your favorite way to do that is, you could hold or look at a picture of Methuselah and go through the process of journeying or meditating to meet her in the astral or spiritual plane, whatever you want to call it, and really tap into her energy and work with her, work with this method that you've chosen to tap into her energy and form a relationship, even from hundreds to thousands of miles away from where she stands. You can still reach out with your energy and connect to this tree that still stands and is still living after thousands of years. You can do that. If you didn't want to do that, you could ground into the earth that holds you, holds Methuselah, and holds every other living thing on the face of the planet. You could sink into connection with the grounded earth and feel the earth and the ground that holds her and you through different ages of time right now in the present moment. And you could connect to her energy that way. There are also mycelial networks all over the world that connect all the roots of all the living things like a giant web that once you ground into the energy of, you can essentially ping back and forth on the energy of the mycelial network just like we do on the internet. It's the Earth's World Wide Web, so to speak. So you could tune in and do whichever method feels right for you to tune in to the mycelial network of the earth and send messages back and forth, not just with her, Methuselah, but with any organism on the face of the planet. We are all carbon-based, and we all can tap into the earth and the web of mycelial networks that connect us all the time, right underneath the surface that we walk on every single day. Now that I've talked about the magical associations and metaphysical properties I might associate with the bristlecone pine and Methuselah, I want to bring up that there is not much traditional folklore attached to this specific tree. However, the pine tree as a genus, or umbrella for the entire species, has long been associated with purification, sacred fire, and the eternal flame. In Greek mythology, the pine was sacred to Dionysus, who carried a pine cone-tipped staff. Today, some modern animist practitioners regard the bristlecone pine as an elder spirit, a teacher of patience, persistence, and the slow wisdom of the earth. Methuselah and the other 4,000 plus year-old bristlecone pines in California are elders. They are our oldest woody elders on the face of the planet, and they should be respected and revered as such. So, please consider that if you ever want to try and travel to Grandmother Methuselah herself. But now we're going to head out of the United States and travel over to Britain, where in churchyards and sacred groves we find the yew tree, which has the genus name of Taxus and many different species. So I'm just going to give you Taxus for now. Now, yews, just like bristlecone pines, can live impressively thousands of years. Fortingall in Scotland, the nearly 5,000-year-old yew tree, was but a seedling when Stonehenge was being crafted. That's pretty cool. Now, if you listen to my cemetery folklore episode, you might remember that yews are often found in cemeteries, and with good reason. The wood, leaves, and seeds of the yew tree are all poisonous, yet the red arils, or the fruit-like cups, are sweet. So the berry itself, the flesh of the fruit of the yew itself, is not poisonous and is in fact very sweet. However, the seeds inside are quite poisonous. So the yew literally carries the sweetness of life and death side by side, making it a perfect guardian for the gates to enter the realm of the dead, cemeteries or graveyards, which often serve as liminal here and there spaces. In Celtic and Norse lore, the yew is a tree of death, a liminal tree, the world tree. Yggdrasil, the great Norse world tree, is traditionally thought to be an ash tree, but some scholars suggest that it may have actually been a yew tree, because yews do not die in a conventional sense. They hollow out, they fall, and then they regrow from their own roots, a natural cycle of resurrection. All of these things and more lend to the magical associations of the yew tree. Right off the rip, of course, necromancy and ancestor work are excellent workings to ally yourself alongside the yew. The yew is a natural choice for Samhain rites, for initiations where you might be going into the underworld of the self, or traveling through a cycle of life where you are being reborn as a new version of you, or when you are trying to craft the life that you want from scratch, burning it all down and starting over again. The yew tree could probably help you out with that. So, just like Methuselah, this tree is a tree of initiation. For initiations where you have to let a part of yourself go, let a part of yourself die, in order to be reborn and reformed as the more authentic and radiant version of yourself that you want to see in the world. The yew is an excellent ally in workings of that nature. or just along a journey of that nature. The last magical association of the yew that I want to present to you today, because of its natural cycle of resurrection, you could directly link this ancient sentinel of the yew tree with the immortality of the soul. The yew as a guardian of souls, as a guardian of the earth's soul, as a guardian of the soul of the universe, even the earth being a portal into greater understanding of the universe at large, but also the immortality of the human soul through various different spiritual beliefs. It could be applied to so many different beliefs from all over the place. So, the immortality of the soul is a great thing to question, engage with, and explore with the aid of the yew tree, which has been asking questions about the immortality of the soul for thousands of years, and certainly will have much to tell you if you decide to engage with it in whatever way calls to you the most. You could certainly explore the methods that I mentioned with the bristlecone pines when it comes to forming a connection to bring in these energies. However, yews are abundant and pretty widely used across the globe nowadays, so it would be pretty easy to find a yew and respectfully ask for some berries or bark or wood, or find a fallen branch, or whatever it may be. You could definitely do that to bring the physical being of the yew tree and the yew spirit into your practice and home. However, because they are widely used across the globe, you could simply go and visit one and form a friendship the old-fashioned way, and literally physically go and spend time with a yew. In Druidic belief, the yew was revered as a guardian of mysteries, and to sit beneath a yew tree was to commune with death itself, not in fear, but in reverence, in holding the wisdom and knowledge of the cyclical nature of life, to make friends with it and get acquainted with the immortality of the soul and live a more fully embodied life. So, that is something that you could try as well. That is very simple. Whether you sit with the sentinel death itself, the yew tree, or any other tree or plant, sitting with a physical plant that you care for or are interested in, opening yourself up to feel what it feels like to sit with a plant like a friend, can be a very heart-opening, engaging, and interesting practice, especially if you are skeptic about it, because they are, in my experience, quite receptive to making friends, for the most part, especially if you have a houseplant or something that you really love already, that you engage with on a regular basis. That could be a very, very easy and fun way to explore opening up your psychic communications with the plant world. But we are definitely in relationship with the green spirits of the earth all the time. But to directly engage with speaking and connecting to plants can feel pretty radical if it's something that you're like, oh, I don't know. But it quickly becomes, oh, why haven't I done this before when they are literally everywhere around me? This is so wonderful and cool. And you get to learn their personalities. And I just suggest that everybody try to do that at least once with at least one plant, because it can be quite eye-opening in a very fun, whimsical, and joyous way. So, all of that being said, I hope you're still with me. Let's now walk over to the Mediterranean, where the olive tree, Olea europaea, has grown since before written history even existed. In places like Greece, Palestine, and Crete, olive trees over 2,000 years old still bear fruit. The olive tree of Vouvs in Crete is believed to be more than 3,000 years old, still vibrant and still producing fruit, which offers up the sacred oil of the olive tree, olive oil. The olive is a tree of peace, of endurance, and is a sacred gift to humanity. In Greek mythology, the city of Athens was given its name after Athena gifted the olive tree to the city. In the Bible, the dove brings an olive branch to Noah as the flood recedes. The olive tree has played a key part in human civilization growing out of the Fertile Crescent, of agriculture growing out of the Fertile Crescent, and the world, literally the world, being able to grow and expand into what we know today. I can't mention olive trees and their importance to human history itself without mentioning that the apartheid state of Israel since 1967 has intentionally desecrated and destroyed over 10,000 Palestinian-owned olive groves, not simply to destroy livelihoods of the Palestinian people, but to destroy their symbol of endurance and of sacred life, and all that the olive tree has done for the way of life of the people in the Mediterranean, but also specifically Palestine. I just wanted to acknowledge that that is a very real truth, and that some very old trees were intentionally destroyed in the name of genocide. And that is a very mild consequence of the horrors that persist from Israel today. Which brings me to my next point: magical associations of the olive tree. Now, historically, peace and healing and ancestral strength have all been very clear, well-documented associations to the olive tree. But what happens when your symbol of peace and ancestral strength is systematically destroyed by genocide? What do we give the association then? I don't think I can answer that question for you, for Palestine, for anyone other than myself, really. And I implore you to seek to do the same. Nothing is black and white, and we all hold multitudes, the olive tree, along with us. So, peace, healing, and ancestral strength can also be held alongside grief, pain, and forced endurance through what most certainly looks and feels like hell on earth. So, that being said, olives, olive trees, and specifically the Cretan 3,000-year-old olive trees could be excellent allies for grounding in strength needed to break systems down, to be resilient when others are beaten and worn and you have to step up, for protection, for citywide protection of anyone, as well as all of those things of peace and healing and, ancestral wisdom and strength. Olive trees have been tended to as sustenance for a very, very long time. So working with olive oil, to sustain yourself through hard times, or to even grow the resources that you already have into something that feels safe and sustainable for you and your family, could also be a really wonderful thing to do, working magically with olive. There are some modern magical practitioners that say that olive branches are great for using in cleansing and consecrations, as well as blessing rituals. So, because it has walked hand in hand and held humanity for so long, it's almost like a motherly energy giving its blessing to your working. All of this, of course, once you have established a relationship or asked kindly for the energy of olive or any other plant that you are working with to join you like a friend, like you would ask somebody you respect or care for to join you. As a general rule of thumb, holding people, things, objects, just everything, coming to everything with a sense of curiosity and respect can take your magical practice just a little bit higher. Just a little bit higher. Just elevate it even more. Do I think that if you don't ask your herb bundle to join you, it won't do its job? No. We all have something that we are here to do. Plants especially. I think that we all have functions that are inherent to us. However, I think that when you come to something with the right intention and energy about you, it will elevate, lift, and expand the possibility of your working. I'm a little rambly today, but I get pretty excited when it comes to both talking about plants and working with green spirits. Also, the idea of 1,000-year-old trees all over the world excites me deeply, makes me happy that they still exist, so I get a little into it. But I also kind of wanted to give you how I look at these associations with the things that I'm exploring in my life right now and in my magical practice right now. So hopefully you enjoy this style of episode. I just had a couple of points today, but we're not done. We have a little bit more to talk about before this episode is over. And the next segment of this episode is one that I'm really excited to share with you, because now we are going to encounter something truly extraordinary. And it's a tree that is not just one tree, but many trees. Meet Pando, the trembling giant, a clonal colony of quaking aspen, botanical name Populus tremuloides, which is in Utah. Pando lives in Utah. And if you've never seen a quaking aspen, I want you to pause this podcast, if it's safe to do so, and go look up a video of them, even if it's not Pando, because they are incredible trees. They are one of my favorite trees in existence, and that is saying something. They don't grow on the East Coast very well. So we might have specimen trees over here, but we're not going to see giant stands of aspens over here. So when I was in school visiting various arboretums to learn, I encountered an aspen for the first time, and it was so tall. Their bark is silvery white, and their leaves in the fall turn yellow. So it's this beautiful juxtaposition of bright yellow against a silvery, papery bark. And they are so tall. They're tall and skinny, and they reach up towards the sky. So high. It's very impressive. They're just majestic and graceful. I was not prepared to see this aspen, this quaking aspen, at the particular arboretum I was at. In fact, I didn't see it, and I was standing listening to a lecture, and it was autumn, so the wind rolls by, and I freaked out, you guys, because I was like, whoa, what is that amazing sound, this rattle sound, shaky, beautiful, rattly, papery, musical sound came along the wind. And it scared me a little bit. It just startled me. I wasn't ready for it. And I was like, what is that? And my professor stopped their lecture and they were like, oh, it's that. And pointed very high above my head to the quaking aspen whose leaves were getting blown in the wind, making this incredible sound, which is why it's called a quaking aspen, because they literally look like somebody is taking them and shaking them like a rattle. And the sound they make is unreal. It was only one as well. So standing in a stand of hundreds to thousands of these trees, I can only imagine to be a moving, incredible experience. And it's something I definitely want to do. I want to visit Pando so bad. It is on my list. But let's jump back into what Pando is. So Pando is made up of over 40,000 individual trunks. Okay? 40,000. This is a stand that is 40,000 strong. But every single trunk, each 40,000 individual trunks, share a single root system. Take that in. One root system of this tree, which is one tree with 40,000 trunks. That is incredible. And its name is Pando, which is delightful. And Pando is estimated to be at least 14,000 years old, but possibly much, much older. That is mind-blowing. I don't even have the ability to understand the scope of the life this organism has lived. That amount of time is very hard for me to wrap my head around in a linear direction. Nevertheless, this forest is an inspiration. This one being is a living symbol of interconnection and invisible unity, because from the top, Pando looks like a forest of the same type of tree, just a stand of aspens, but from the bottom, you see that they're all clones that are connected to the same root system, the same mycelial network, and they are all the same being, spread out and doing so much for the ecosystem in their direct area, and have been doing so much for 14,000 years. There is not much written folklore on Pando, but the aspen tree itself carries deep magical lore. In Celtic tradition, the quaking of its leaves, that wonderful sound I got to experience organically, was said to allow communication to the other world. The rustling of the aspen was said to be the language of spirits, and it does sound like that. It sounds like a great horde of whispers coming at you all at once. And that was only one tree. So I can imagine 40,000 of them is pretty discombobulating in the best way possible. And I want to experience it. And I will one day. But magical associations with aspen and, of course, Pando could be, like the others, ancestral memory. But because Pando is one organism that is 40,000 trunks strong, you could easily ally yourself with Pando to tap into collective wisdom, the conscious collective, right? If you are doing something for a group of people, if you're offering a service, if you want to engage in any kind of divination, priestessing, stewardship, or just otherwise being an oracle or a guide in any kind of magical situation, you could ask Pando to join you to tap into the collective wisdom of all that came before you, of your ancestors, of the earth, to really let you drop in to that mycelial network and that web and get rooted so that you can pull the knowledge from wherever you need to pull the knowledge from, so that you can tap in and tune all the way in through time and space to deliver the messages, the help, and the aid that you need to deliver. You specifically on your path, you embracing your calling, could be aided very deeply when calling in Pando to your workings. Putting a picture of Pando on your altar, adding a picture into your grimoire, carrying it with you on a keychain, anything like that, to really help you drop all the way in to what you envision as your purpose that you want to bring to the collective. Or perhaps you're doing something like an Akashic Records meditation, or you are otherwise needing to tune into some kind of collective wisdom. Asking Pando for help on that could really aid you in getting where you need to go and getting the information you need for your working very quickly. Like I just mentioned, the quaking of the leaves was said to allow communication with the other world, with the rustling of the leaves being the language of spirits. So of course, Aspen and Pando specifically could be a great ally for spirit communication. Anything to do with it. I don't even need to go into all of the different ways because there are so many, but anything regarding spiritual communication, Aspen could be a great ally to work with for any of those kinds of workings. Lastly, I want to present to you the idea of protection in numbers. There is protection in numbers in many cases, so calling in Pando for protection could be a really beautiful practice, whether it's a personal shield, whether it's a ward for your home, or perhaps a confusion spell. I'm thinking of, if you wanted to ward yourself or your home from people who wish you harm, you could essentially call up the energy of Pando to assist you to disorient and redirect people away from you or your home or wherever it is you're trying to protect. Imagine calling in the element of this grand forest so that if anybody approaches your space that you want to protect, they are essentially experiencing the same thing that you might experience walking through a forest you're unfamiliar with, where every tree looks the same, and you get disoriented, and perhaps you just have to go back the exact way you came so you don't end up lost in the woods forever. That could be very powerful protection magic. But the last thing I want to leave you with for Pando is that in a modern animist and ecological spirituality point of view, Pando is today revered as something akin to the green man or a green god, a land deity, or a pan-earth spirit, right? An embodiment of Earth's long consciousness, a being that is huge, massive, protective, and enduring in a very specific part of the world that is protecting a very specific place in the forest. So it makes total sense that we would look at Pando as a spirit of place, a land deity of that one particular place in Utah. I just really love envisioning Pando as a green spirit of the forests of Utah. Now, our final stop on this lovely winding journey brings us to the American South, specifically to Johns Island, which is just outside of Charleston, South Carolina, where the mighty Angel Oak stands. Now, I recently visited the Angel Oak for the first time, even though I'm from the Carolinas, and it was a moving experience, to say the least. As soon as I saw this tree, I started weeping. And when I think about it, I still get a little weepy. It was incredible. The angel oak is a southern live oak, botanical name Quercus virginiana, and it is estimated to be 400 to 500 years old. Although my personal opinion is that it is much older than that. And if you look up photos, you will see why. However, this tree is so old that its limbs twist and bow like great serpents of wood, going up and down, some touching the ground, some sprawling more than 170 feet wide, with some branches stretching horizontally as long as a mature pine is tall. So about 70 feet from trunk to the outer edges of the canopy at some of the farther points, which is incredible, like insane. Walking into the space of the angel oak, you look around you and it feels like you are in a forest of trees. But much like Pando, it's all one tree. And it's not clonal, but her branches have become so heavy that part of them have been buried underground. So they come back up and they look like they are their own tree, but they aren't. They're part of one tree. One tree. It's amazing. But the angel oak is more than just an ancient tree. It's a cultural and spiritual touchstone, especially to the Gullah Geechee people, who are descendants of West African enslaved people who maintained a strong African culture and linguistic tradition across the coastal South and South Carolina. To the Gullah Geechee, the angel oak is a sacred ancestor, a living witness to a painful and powerful past. Oral traditions say that this tree, the angel oak, holds the spirits of the enslaved, and that it has offered shelter, prayer, and perhaps even aided in resistance for those folks who needed it, not just in the past, but also in the present, and also in the spirit realm through time and space. Like many oaks, it is a guardian, and to many in the community, the tree is alive in spirit, not just form. And I agree with this. The angel oak definitely felt like an ancestor, like a mama. She had a mama spirit to her, and she enveloped me in a giant hug energetically when I started weeping, like she had known me forever, and it felt so, so good. When developers threatened to encroach upon the land that surrounded the angel oak, the local Gullah Geechee activists helped to spearhead efforts to protect this wonderful tree, not just as a tree, but as a living cultural monument. And they were very successful. This tree is now a protected site, and if you were to go, you would understand just how cared for and loved and protected this tree is. I wanted to sit down and commune with her and tell her thank you, and I sat on the ground and was immediately told, "No sitting with the tree," because they don't want the roots to be any more compacted than they already are from the constant visitation that she gets, because compacted soil can be very hard on roots, but especially hundreds of years old roots. So that's just a small piece of how well taken care of this tree is. They also had brought in Bartlett tree experts, which are leading experts in tree care in various situations. I've actually worked with them a bit, and I know about what they do, and I've been to their facilities, and there's no better folks to be taking care of this very important special tree. And while we were there, Bartlett was there gently aerating her roots. So they were undoing some of the compaction so that she can continue to thrive and breathe, because trees do breathe through their roots. And I loved seeing that. I loved seeing how well taken care of she was, and that she is now protected by the state of South Carolina, but also by the historical societies and other activist groups in Charleston. So that was really lovely to see. Now, the oak, not just the live oak, not just the angel oak, but the oak is another tree that has walked hand in hand with humanity for a very long time. The oak has always symbolized strength, endurance, and sovereignty to us as humans. In Celtic Druidry, the oak was the king of the forest, a doorway between worlds. The word druid itself may have come from the root word dru, which literally means oak. But the significance of oaks goes well beyond lore and myth and symbolism. Oaks are a keystone species in many ecosystems. A keystone species is a species of plant that many other species rely on in order to continue existing. The ecological magic of oaks comes in the facts of what they do for the world around them. One mature oak can support over 500 species of insects, birds, and mammals. That is incredible, and they are the only keystone species that supports that many other creatures and critters. Oaks also host lichen, moss, and fungi, and they provide acorns for countless animals. And they have also provided acorns for humanity over hundreds and hundreds of years. Acorns were actually a key staple in making humans in the United States, ancient humans, ancient peoples, and of course our Native Americans, able to continue to thrive and live here in the United States. Acorns were a crucial part to humanity in North America. Earlier in this episode, I mentioned that trees are able to annex certain parts of themselves that get wounded or damaged, etc., etc. Well, oaks tend to hollow their centers because of the diseases that they face. So oftentimes old oak trees will have hollowed centers in their branches, which is true for the angel oak as well. Almost all of her branches were hollow on the middle, which means that their hollow limbs would often become a natural dwelling for creatures like owls, squirrels, snakes, and other woodland creatures that need a home. I love imagining that I'm outside of the angel oak weeping and having an intense spiritual experience, while on the inside there is a whole hustling, bustling village of woodland creatures living their daily lives inside of this 500-year-old oak tree. I don't know, it's just it's a charming thought to me. It makes me happy. Now, lastly, oaks, but also specifically live oaks, stabilize soil and filter water. Now, most things with roots do this. However, oaks tend to have a larger, deeper root system than some trees to compensate for their size, right? They get pretty big pretty quickly in relation to other trees. So it's impressive that their root system is almost always as deep as half the width of whatever their canopy width is. So if they have a canopy width of 30 feet, their root system is going to typically be about 15 or more feet deep, which is very impressive because most trees have wide roots, but not very deep roots, which is why we get a lot of uprooting in heavy storms and things like that. But oaks, especially live oaks, which have some very deep root systems, some of the deepest root systems of oak trees, it's just very impressive. They're a keystone species for a reason, and where oaks grow, communities grow, both ecologically and, spiritually. Like, we naturally formed communities around this life-giving tree, this life-giving species. So, of course, where we can grow ourselves ecologically and physically, be able to sustain ourselves as humans, with other critters being able to do the same, naturally we would flourish spiritually as well when we were able to actually truly build something sustainable. So, all of that being said, the angel oak itself is not just sacred because of what people feel about it. It's sacred because it is intrinsic to life itself, in its lifespan, in its support, and in the memory that it holds in its branches. To sit with the angel oak, metaphorically, because you can't sit with it anymore, we don't want to damage the roots, but to metaphorically sit beneath the angel oak is to remember that strength and softness can coexist together, that arms can stretch far and wide in welcome, and that memory can live on, and not just in practice. Memory physically lives on in your physical being, in the angel oak's physical being. When it comes to the angel oak, longevity and grace are really great key words for the energy of the angel oak. Now that we've taken quite the journey, I hope you're starting to realize that every culture has its sacred trees. In Japan, ancient trees are marked with shimenawa ropes, home to the kami or divine spirits. So these ropes mark sacred trees and mark them as homes to the kami or divine spirits of the natural places in Japan. In West Africa, sacred groves of trees are inhabited by ancestral spirits and orishas. In Baltic and Slavic traditions, forest spirits dwell in old trees, and to cut one without offering or getting permission is to invite misfortune and even sometimes death. In traditional European witchcraft, the woods themselves were initiators, and I believe this to my core. Witches were said to meet in groves and to learn from trees and to carry staffs of elder, ash, or rowan, or any other wood that called to that particular initiate. All trees have their own personalities and personal associations that you can get to know the more that you spend time with those specific trees. Working with old trees or their spirits is a reciprocal act. To approach one in reverence, to sit at its roots, to leave offerings of water or song, that is entering into a relationship. And these are not resources. These are elders. These are beings in their own right, and they should be revered and respected as such. Whether the tree is old or young, the green spirits and the trees of our world are more than just curiosities. They are living temples, spirits of place, and guardians of the earth that we only have one of. To walk among them is to feel your soul stretch across centuries. To sit beneath them is to be reminded of cycles that are older than any empire. So wherever you are, find a tree, any tree, touch its bark, offer it your breath, your sacred breath of life, and remember that you are not separate. You, too, are root and branch, just as the ancients are. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask you to share it with a fellow wanderer. And if you want to talk to me, share your experience relating to this episode or any of our episodes, or if you just want to tell me about what's happening magically in your life, my inbox is always open. You can find out how to chat with me in the show notes below. And until next time, may your spirit be still and your heart ring out like the knocks on a hollow branch. Don't forget, dear listener, to keep your roots deep and your dreams wild. I'll see you next time. Thank you.